All right. Welcome, everyone. This is the 9th day of December 2019. Welcome. I think first we have a couple of public hearings. The first public hearing on a request for surplus city right-of-way at 114 South Maple Street. So let me ask Ms. Moody or her designee to explain the situation, please.
I'm happy to. This is a property that you would be familiar with. It's behind Dameron's Restaurant, and it's a residential neighborhood in that area. This property is just shy of a 6,000 square foot required for a buildable lot. And so with this minor sliver of city right-of-way, they'll be able to meet 6,000 square feet and build a small home there.
So, were you looking at me? Do you think I eat out a lot? Is that why you think I would know where it is behind Dameron's Restaurant?
Yes, when Evelyn's out of town, I know you still have to eat.
And she's out of town now. Yeah.
That's why you look like you lost a lot of weight today at the meeting.
Yeah, I'm certainly not eating so well. Let me, before we get started, I do need to get a bit of advice. So, as you possibly know, mayors in Tennessee can officiate at weddings. And so 3 or 4 times a year, I'm asked to officiate at a wedding. I've officiated as many as 3 in one day before. So I got a text the other day from a young lady, and the text said, "Can you marry me in Lynchburg on Wednesday?" And I looked at my calendar, and I was free on Wednesday. But I texted her back, and I said, you know, I'm generally pretty happy with Evelyn. We've never even met before, you know? So I texted that to her, and I haven't heard back.
You win some, you lose some.
Yeah. So I don't know. So does anybody have any advice for me?
So you let it go.
Good advice. Yeah.
Move on.
I haven't heard back, so we'll let it go. Okay, does anyone have any questions regarding the public hearing? In the audience have anything to add to that? Seeing none, we will proceed to our second public hearing on ordinance number 1530, an ordinance to amend Title 16, Streets and Sidewalks, etc., by amending Chapter 5, Street, Curbs, and Sidewalk Design Standards and Specifications of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Tullahoma, Tennessee. Once again, let me get an explanation from Ms. Moody or her designee, and then we'll open it up for any citizen comments. The floor is yours.
Yes, so from time to time, we review our ordinances, and as issues arise, we make notes of amendments that we need. There are 3 significant changes that I'll point out to you with this revision. First is that we are creating a standard that new driveways will need to have a concrete or paved surface apron. We're hoping that will keep, well, for several reasons, but help keep the streets clean, help improve stormwater quality by keeping gravel in driveways and not on the roadway. So that's one change. Another is amending a part of our standards that said contractors, if they would buy the materials for culverts, that our staff could install. And that's just something that in practice is impractical for us, hasn't really occurred, and we want to clean up that language. The third thing is we were encountering some times where homes were being built out in our UGB, our urban growth boundary, and our street standards are actually equivalent with the county street standards. So we didn't find any conflict there, but we do have a requirement for sidewalks to be constructed and My concern was for maintenance out in those areas. So portions of sidewalk would be constructed out in the urban growth boundary, and with today's annexation laws, it's very unlikely that we would annex into those areas, but yet we would be responsible for maintaining the sidewalk. So I ask that we just keep our codes equivalent with the county standards out in the UGB and remove that language that required sidewalks.
Anyone in the audience have any questions to direct to Ms. Moody? Seeing none, any aldermen have any questions? All right, we'll close the public hearing, go into the regular meeting of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. First, the roll call.
Yes, Mayor Curley.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Blanks.
Here.
Alderperson Berry.
Here.
Blackwell.
Here.
Dunn.
Here.
Noes.
Here.
And Mathis. Six present.
We have a quorum. We will proceed. We're very pleased that Pastor Don Dixon is with us. I ask that Reverend Dixon please step to the podium and offer the invocation and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ask everyone to please stand. Reverend Dixon.
Let us pray. We thank thee, O God, for the gifts that gives us meaning and purpose to life. Not only family relationships and friendships, but also the community in which we live. We thank you for that privilege of living here in Tullahoma and being part of the South Central Middle Tennessee area. Pray that you would bless this board tonight as they have decisions to make. I pray that you would continue to give them the vision that we have had in Tullahoma down through our history, and that you would bless us as a community with thy continued watch care over us. For this we pray in thy name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Reverend Dixon. All right, you see we have a new honorary alderman with us this evening. We're very pleased to welcome Ms. Grace Holmes. Ms. Holmes has a very, very impressive resume. Her current, her class ranking is 11th out of 246. She's a senior at Tullahoma High School, a 4.46 GPA. She has a 96 in, I didn't even know we taught Arabic.
I took that at Penn State, not in Tullahoma.
Oh.
Yes, sir. She passed me a long time ago. Geometry honors, physics honors, AP English language and composition, Spanish 1 honors, Spanish 2 honors. Where I have met Ms. Holmes on numerous occasions is through her work with the Marine Corps Junior ROTC and leadership role that she plays in that. And she has 2 pages of distinctions, medals and ribbons, community service. It's very, very impressive. Very active in high school, National Honor Society, National English Honor Society, Mu Alpha Theta Math Honor Society, Mayor's Youth Council, Distinguished Young Women Local Participant, Science Olympiad Team, Student Council. She's also was on the cross-country team, the rifle team, the drill team, the color guard. Very, very impressive. So, Ms. Holmes, welcome. We're glad that you're with us this evening. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, please, ma'am. Well, thank you for having me here. I am very glad to have this opportunity of being here to learn more about our community. Like he was saying, I am a senior at the high school. I have been involved in Mayor's Youth Council since my sophomore year, and I've come to almost every single meeting, and I've loved helping our community grow and build and understand each other better every time that I've come here. I have been on the drill team for our Tullahoma High School MCJROTC for the past 4 years. I'm also the captain of the rifle team. I've also been on that for 4 years. And we actually just came back from our first drill meet of the season, which was in Hazel Green, Alabama. And that was a very enriching experience as well. Kind of sad, my last Hazel Green drill meet of my senior year. But we are also looking forward to a lot more meets and rifle matches for the rest of the year.
Do you mind sharing with the group what your plans are after graduation?
I would like to either attend the United States Naval Academy, which is where my brother Bradley is attending. He was also honorary alderman here a couple of years ago as well before he graduated. And if I did not get into there, I would attend the University of Mississippi for their international studies and Arabic programs.
Wow. And you've got some relatives with you this evening.
Yes.
Introduce.
Well, my mom, Christine Holmes, is right here, and right next to her is my dad, David Holmes.
Good.
They're
So-
awesome.
Well, you are as well. So if you would, we've got a certificate recognizing you as the honorary alderman. If you don't mind, stand in front of the flags and we'll present the certificate to you. I've never seen their resumes, so I don't know if they're as awesome as you or not. Mom, do you want a picture? Raise your leg, put one eye on one person and one eye on the other. Congratulations. So in just a few minutes, we'll recognize you for any activities that you would like to discuss that you're involved with as well during the board reports of that. Okay, Ms. Moody, I'll recognize you at the podium for a presentation, please, ma'am.
We are surrounded tonight with very honorable people. Tonight, we are going to honor some employees of the month for the month of December, and I would like to invite both of our chiefs up to recognize these individuals with me. Chief Williams and Chief Shastine. And I'll turn over to Chief Williams to give the background.
The employee of the month that we'd like to recognize out of the Tullahoma Police Department is Patrolwoman Kelly Fogus. She responded to a call October 16th of this year at Walmart where one of our citizens was in distress and had collapsed in Walmart. When she got on scene, she realized what was going on, and fortunately for our citizen, that there was a nurse that happened to be close to, in proximity to him as well. And Patrolwoman Fogus began administering medical aid to the citizen and performing CPR in an attempt to give the nurse a break and sustain his life. And at that point in time, Tullahoma Fire Department responded and continued that process. And we are very fortunate and happy to say our citizen is here with us tonight as a result of their efforts. So.
Thank you. I'm here to help recognize Engineer Paul McCowan and Lieutenant Clint Teeters. The teamwork of the police and fire department in Tullahoma is unmatched in most communities. Fortunately, Chief Williams is carrying on that great tradition of working with us hand in hand. Our number one job is to save lives, police and fire. And this is something that happened that a lot of people go through their whole career preparing for, hoping to have a chance, not that somebody's in a bad way, but having a chance to save a life. And these three individuals, pretty early in their career, have achieved that, and that's something that they'll always remember, I guarantee you. If it's okay, I'd like to ask the recipient of those services to come up and maybe say a few words.
If he's receptive to that.
He is, yeah. Mr. Fugate, would you mind coming up?
I want to make sure we had his permission first.
Yes, sir.
Welcome.
Hi. I'm proud to say that I'm one of the success stories. And y'all have put the right programs in place and the training and all that. And I'm here. I'm so grateful. I want to thank the chiefs. They have led the direction or whatever to make sure that these people are, and also the individuals. I'm here to help somebody, and they go to all the trouble they can to make sure they're prepared when they go out and they did, and it was a wonderful thing. I had a freak problem that my heart would just stop and stall, and it was going to kill me, but the good Lord arranged this tremendous parade so that I will get the full benefit of the best in the best technology going, and I was, and so I was the recipient, and I'm grateful to everybody involved, and I'm going to do the most I can with my new life. I'm excited to be a citizen of Tullahoma. I love this town, and they've been good to me, and I want to be good to Tullahoma. And God bless everybody. And I called the chief right after I could, the first chance I could, and he arranged a meeting so I could go hug their necks, and that was important to me. And I'm grateful, and I always will be. And I'm grateful to God. He made this possible, and He's the one that sent the spark of life back. But these people worked all feverishly, and they really done everything that a human could possibly do. And God bless you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your kind words. The three are here tonight, so let's make sure we get those.
We have Officer Kelly Fogus. Would you like to make any statement?
You know what, actually, it's not often that I get to work with the fire department. I do see the ambulance quite often, unfortunately, but for the time that I do get to work with them, I just want to recognize their outstanding professionalism. It's not always easy to work with the hose drivers, but it's a pleasure to get to work with these guys.
Thank you. And then Paul McCowan. Would you also like to say a few words?
I'd like to say thank you to the City of Tullahoma and to the fire chief for giving us the opportunity to get the training and the equipment that we have to save lives that we have. It goes to show what we use, the AED and everything. It shows right here as an individual, he's here today to talk to us and everything. So thank y'all, thank the chief and everybody. It was a team effort.
I'll have to touch on what Lieutenant Teeters was saying as well. The great equipment, great leadership we have, great teamwork we have with the police department, the ambulance service and all that. Work with each other real well, and just goes to show, in this instance.
I want to say one other thing, because I know Mr. Fugate has a great story, and he's told it, but one of the things he said, he could hear them telling him to hold on. They didn't know he could hear them, but he could hear them. So if that happens to somebody around you, talk to them. A lot of times it will keep their mind and keep them in focus of trying to stay alive. Talk to them. Hang on. Stay with me. Is that right, Mr. Fugate?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So, I thought that was awesome.
Great advice. Thank you.
Yes, so I want to thank you for your truly heroic actions. I know, just as you said, you prepare for that day and you don't know when it's going to come. And I'm grateful to all of you and all the first responders. And as you said, to our board that supports the training and the equipment to make it possible to be there when the minutes matter. So thank you very much.
Can we get Mr. Fugate in the picture? Yes, sir. Hey, Ted, did you not get in the picture?
No.
One, two, three, one more. Okay, Ms. Moody, thank you. So we're now ready for comments from citizens. Anyone in the audience have anything to address the board at this time? Mr. Sandlin.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Greg Sandlin, 112 Thomas Wood Chase. Yeah, I've done this before. I'm just reporting on the Coffee County Public Building Authority. I served on that board for 2 years now, and I just want to give a brief report. There's no question that the conference center has a major economic impact on the county. You know, we'll probably have 450 events this fiscal year. And those are hotel stays, they're restaurants, they're dropping by Walmart, they're probably coming through Tullahoma too. So it's a big impact. But I do want to report that we're not doing as well the first 5 months of this fiscal year as last fiscal year. We're down a little bit, several percentages, and our outdoor venues struggling a little bit. But the good news, I want to challenge this board. The conference center will be paid for in 18 months, and at that point, there will have to be a renegotiation of the contract. And right now, it's split between Manchester and Coffee County, of which Tullahoma is 38%, in terms of how these operating losses are covered. There's already some action to try to get a real plan in place. That's being led by the Commission Budget and Finance Committee. Our own Dwight Miller and Lynn Seaborn are on that committee. They'll be heavily involved with that. So I would encourage this board to make their case, make their interest known to that leadership as they formulate a new plan for that conference center. I believe that having been on the board for 2 years, Manchester benefits far more from the presence of that conference center than Tullahoma. And that just needs to be in the equation so that that Tullahoma citizens aren't underwriting the losses for that conference center. So I just wanted to share that and get that in your, yes, Alderman Black.
Has the conference center been in the black since it's been constructed?
Oh, yes. It's never made a profit. It's always been underwritten by a split between the county and Manchester. We're on track this fiscal year. We're on track to lose about $360,000. Last fiscal year was $350,000. The real bad years were 2014-15, where it was $500,000, $480,000 lost. It's the multiplier of impact is been calculated by MTSU. There's some impact. Whether or not it's a wash, it's hard to tell. But for Tullahoma to be underwriting that, that's something that needs to be considered in that equation. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Did the MTSU, did they factor in for the impact that they thought in the different areas, or is it just split for Coffee County?
I think their formula was for Coffee County.
Okay.
Yeah, as I recall.
Okay.
Was that study paid for by the PBA, paid a group inside of MTSU to do that study, or was that a completely autonomous, non-biased study?
I forget who cut the check. That was before I was on the board. I forget who cut the check for that. It was like a $4,000 effort, for that part of MTSU, fairly non-profit, to generate that study.
And you said out of that $360,000, our cut of that's about 38%.
Well, you got to split it of the loss that's projected. Let's say it's $360,000 for this fiscal year. Manchester's going to cover $180,000, and the rest of the county covers the $180,000, and then we would cover roughly 38% of that.
Well, when you said the city government won't, but the citizens of Tullahoma do.
Yeah, oh yeah, the taxpayer.
I just want to clarify.
Well, we don't have a line item to support the conference center.
Correct.
Thank goodness.
It shows up in our county taxes, you know, and what's required to cover that loss. And there's a lot of friction with the county. The county commission has only budgeted $250,000 of their budget. I'm sorry, $125,000 of their budget to underwrite the conference center. But they go over every year, so and the county is forced to cover the loss. And there's just a lot of friction with that. And certainly from the Tullahoma Alderman, the Tullahoma commissioners feel that very strongly.
Well, thank you for your service on that board.
Oh, you bet. My pleasure.
Thank you, Mr. Stanley. Okay, we're ready for board reports. Mr. Berry, please, sir.
First, just how extremely proud of the awesome men and women in our emergency services. You can't say that enough. Since we last met, I attended a county commission meeting. Met with the Consolidated Communications Center. We passed a new bonus pay policy. It was based on training versus kind of the old system. I think it was much better. Attended the Christmas parade. Everybody that was involved in that, awesome job. It was phenomenal. Shout out to Public Works. Everything looked great outside, and we left kind of late, and they were out there cleaning the streets and making everything look amazing. So thank you for that. I spent some time in the Jefferson Street Park area, listening to some different ideas and concerns that people have, just kind of walking around there. I'll resume the town halls. Next one will be scheduled for Tuesday. I've had some personal stuff, so we've kind of put those on hold. And then real quick, just reading through here, I saw Officer Bob Looney retiring, and want to thank him for his 40 years. That's just amazing service to the community. Congratulate Lieutenant Henderson for being selected for Bradford's Hometown Hero. I saw him, maybe not. Then congratulate Jeremy Taylor for, I think I saw 12 years of service, engineer at the fire department. Jason Maloney for completing 3 years of service. There's some amazing people working for the city of Tullahoma. They walking behind the scenes, and nobody knows they're there till you need them.
That's good that they're there.
They're there.
So this Friday at 2 o'clock, there'll be a reception recognition for Mr. Looney, Officer Looney here.
Awesome.
I think that announcement will go out tomorrow, maybe. Anything else, Mr. Barry?
That is it, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Ms. Blackwell?
Yeah, we had our Planning Commission yearly training this past week, and it was fascinating and long, 4 hours of training, but we got a lot of information, lots about I learned a lot about what our planned use developments and how those work within our community and what our zoning and codes allow for with them. So I'm really grateful for that and thankful that Mr. Lawson put that together for us. Went to the parade. Barely got there, but thank you, Chief Chastain, for letting us on the fire truck at the very last minute. I literally ran up and was texting Robin, Alderman Dunn, to find out where they were because I was very late. But my daughter and I made it, and it was fantastic. The parade was amazing. The Chamber of Commerce does such a great job putting it on. I'm very grateful for us still having that around in our community. Other than that, winding down the end of the year, there's a lot going on with the school system. So, yeah. That's all I got.
Good, thank you. Dr. Blanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Since our last meeting, I attended a TUA meeting. We looked at a new truck that we purchased. It has all the bells and whistles, and it'll make it easier to keep our power up and going. I think our linemen do a bang-up job. I think we're like in the 99th percentile as far as time out when we have a power outage, so I think they do a good job. Also took a cybersecurity tutorial that everybody up here should have taken or is in the process of taking, and all city employees. So I took that, and it was about 45 minutes to an hour on your computer, your laptop, or your desktop. So there's a lot of nefarious people in the world that are trying to get in and make you click on stuff you don't need to click on, city stuff. So we want to keep our internet and our cyber stuff safe here in the city. So if you hadn't done that, you need to by the end of the month, right, Jennifer? When is it? Soon?
That's right.
Okay. Christmas parade was Friday night. Did a bang up job. I think there were a lot of new entries this year. The Chamber did another great job with the Christmas parade. Duck River has met, Utility Commission met in the last month. We had our audit findings presented. We had a clean audit. Everything looked good there. It is the Christmas season. We're all doing shopping. We all want bargains if we can get bargains. You know, there's Cyber Monday and blah, blah, blah. So my son sent a list of stuff that he would like for Christmas. And so I went shopping, and I could have saved probably $50 if I would have bought it online. It was available in the city of Tullahoma. So I bought it in the city of Tullahoma because you always need to, what?
Shop local.
Shop Tullahoma. That's all I have, Mayor.
Good advice. I think there were 100, Ms. Sarton said there were 117 floats, or maybe entries, and not floats, but entries, the largest parade ever, she said.
Yeah, I could tell there were more.
And I think Mr. Skelton said there were 21 net new starts for Light Tube this month. It was an excellent
19
month.
plus 19. We're to 3909. 4,000 is our, when we get that, I might do something special.
Uh-oh. You're going to run it by me first before you...
No. It's a complete surprise.
Ms. Dunn.
Yes, I've heard from two different sources a rumor that I wanted to dispel, and I'm going to talk to Butch Taylor too, but I had heard that they're discontinuing leaf pickup, and I know it's not true because they came by my house today. Did you want to speak on it at all?
Yeah, I mean, if that's happened, I'm not aware of it.
Okay.
As of this moment.
Yeah, we're continuing leaf service every day, rain, sleet, or snow for the most case, but no, I'm not sure where that came from. We're running leaves every day, biodegradable bags and also loose leaf pickup.
And it's about every 3 weeks. If you're a homeowner, they see you about every 3 weeks.
And this time of year, it gets a little less than that because the bulk is getting out there now. So, but yeah.
Okay, well, we heard it here first.
Yep.
So it's still happening.
I'm not aware of it. Listen,
okay.
saying
All right.
something I don't know.
Just want to set the record straight. Okay, thank you, Butch. I appreciate that. I did the Tullahoma Parade. We participated in that, and that was fantastic. And I was so glad Alderman Blackwell asked me to do the tour of homes. I had told her no, and then she asked me 3 more times, so I said yes. And I'm so glad. I went to the home of the Dennis family, and it was just beautiful, and it really brought to mind how much our environment makes an impact on us. We know that in our own home, we impact our home because we pick out all the things, but it was so neat seeing all these people come through the door and just the look on their faces. That house is so beautiful. Everybody's just, and so it made me kind of think about the North Jackson plan, how having a streetscape, it's really going to change the way people go to work and go to school, and it's going to put you in a good mood to go shopping. And I'm very glad that we're going to be looking at that this year, because having a pretty place to live really does make a difference, and it makes you feel good and want to do good things. So I wanted to talk a little bit about different things that we did with Go Green, a year in review. So we had almost 30 rain barrels. I think it was 27 rain barrels that we gave away this summer. Paul Davis from TDEC came in and talked about flooding and what we can do to prevent that. We had about, I think, a dozen people at that forum. We gave away over 30 composters. I think it was somewhere 35 at one of our farmers market. And we've got our watershed plan is underway. We've got Jim Patterson is getting that constructed so that we can look at a TDEC grant for next year. So this is a very large grant that we want to be able to put together, and Jennifer and Winston and Butch and Jim, they've all been very, very good about, trying to figure out what we can do to put together for the city of Tullahoma. We've got 2 rain gardens that we've got started as far as figuring out where they're going to be, what different types of plants we want in there. So that's something that's coming in 2020. We have our third Earth Day. We're going to be We're going to do this this year. We're going to partner with the farmers market. So looking forward in 2020, we're going to be doing that with them. So already having another venue that's already in place. So I think that's going to be really, really cool. We've got a couple of other things that I don't want to say what they are, but I will say that there's good things happening. So, but yeah, 2020 is going to be a good year for Go Green.
So, is that part of Dr. Blank's surprise, or is it another surprise?
No.
Okay. Just checking. Anything else? Good. A lot of good things going on. Mr. Neville.
I don't have any surprises. As Alderman Blackwell indicated, we did have a planning commission training marathon this past week. 4 hours of that. It's good stuff. Good stuff that floated around to us. Anyway, in addition to that meeting, we did have a planning commission meeting also prior to that, since we met last. So at that. Tomorrow evening, I will be meeting with the airport authority, and right now, the airport has an opportunity the city has an opportunity to assist one of the tenants at the airport, XP Services. They're looking for a couple of new hangars, 100,000 square feet hangars there that the city administrator is working on, going after some grants to help with that, some help for them with that. The Christmas parade. It was a wonderful event. It was the best attended Christmas parade I think we ever had. Of course, the temperature of this year had something to do with that. But that was officially the Chamber of Commerce Stan McNabb Christmas Parade is the official title for that thing. And it is getting so big. It's going to have to start in Manchester, I think, next year. Anyway, it was a great event. I had an opportunity to ride with Chief Williams. It's the first time I've ever ridden in the front seat of a police car.
Saved him about the back seat.
That's all I have.
Is there more to that story? Or
No surprise. No surprises.
Thank you. Okay. Ms. Holmes, anything that you'd like to add?
Yes, along with the theme of the Christmas parade, unfortunately I did not get to see all of that because our drill meet was the next day. It's kind of hard waking up at 4:30 in the morning when you go to sleep at 11:30 p.m. so that I did not do that, so I did not get to see all of it. But we did have about 35 cadets that helped with the banners for most of the floats, and that was a very good thing that they did. They did a very good job with that. The things in Mayor's Youth Council that we're doing, our most recent thing that we've done was sponsoring 5 Angel Tree children from the Tullahoma Arts Center. We got that completed on Sunday, which was yesterday afternoon, and we submitted all of those gifts today. That was a very good thing that we did. Coming up, we have our Dustin Lynch concert, which is on December 17th. I hope everybody who wanted to go has already gotten all their tickets because I don't know if they're sold out or not, but we will have that at the high school on Tuesday night, which is December 17th. And we will have, it's not confirmed, but we're trying to get a fundraiser going for Mayor's Youth Council, which is gift wrapping at Walmart. We're trying to get that on the 21st and the 22nd, which is Saturday and Sunday, basically all day. We haven't confirmed that yet, but if you have anything that you need to just buy last minute before Christmas and have that wrapped at Walmart, for a very small donation, we will do that for you, and you will help programs like this for Mayor's Youth Council. That's all I have.
Very good. Thank you. So I'm very pleased to report once again the City Government of Tullahoma has distinguished once again the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award for the current budget from the Government Finance Officers Association. I don't know how many years.
but it's, I would say 20-something anyway.
It is
Yeah.
over 20, I don't remember.
All right. But it-
We may want to do this again next meeting. We've received awards for both our certified annual financial report and the budget, and invite the finance staff.
Sure, good idea.
And recognize them.
Yeah. There's your employee of the month right there. Yep. Okay, city attorney's report. Mr. Worsham, please, sir.
You know, I think y'all think we're always working on things and never complete anything, and that's the case again now. But we're working with Moody on the acquisition of some property by donation in downtown Tullahoma, and we have some exciting prospects for what we're going to do with that, which will be a real boon to the development of downtown. As you know, the city's involved in the Downtown Main Street program. I'm fortunate to be a member of that committee along with Winston, and of course Ms. Moody is helping with that as well. And this works into the plans that we have for the development of downtown as a focal point or a city center for Tullahoma. So that's an exciting prospect. We're about to finish up on all of the documentation necessary to acquire easements to complete the East Grundy Street sidewalk project that's in the mill, and I promised Mr. Taylor that he'd have those deeds ready to be executed this week. It's been a long process because during the process when we were working on this, ownership changed for a couple of people's property, so we had to kind of revamp, all and do new things like that. You all may recall that about a year ago or so, a lawsuit was brought relative to the new convenience store and filling station at the corner of Clement Drive and Winchester Highway or West Side Drive. The city was a nominal party defendant in one of those suits. We got word from our attorney in Nashville, who's representing us through our insurance carrier, that it looks as if there's a tentative settlement brewing in that will result in the cities not having any economic impact at all on us, but there perhaps may be some things we might have to agree with regarding considering rezoning and things of that nature. We'll bring those things before you when the occasion arises. Other than that, while we're working still on the background information that we need to develop in order to have the property tax delinquent tax sale late next year, and we're working on just day-to-day projects of all kinds. So if y'all have any questions, let me know.
Thank you, Mr. Worsham.
Otherwise, Merry Christmas to the board and to the people of Tullahoma. Thank you for allowing me to serve with you.
Yeah, thank you. So, Ms. Moody, the floor is yours. I know we have some guests tonight.
We do. I'll also just mention a few things briefly. I echo all your comments about the Christmas parade. It was, and thank the chamber, it was their largest parade on record. I think they said they had over 117 floats, something like that. And our Tullahoma Fire Department entered a float this year and it won 2 awards. So I want to make sure we thank them and mention that. Also, I want to remind you, Saturday, December 14th, Wreaths Across America. They will be laying wreaths at the Oakwood Cemetery if you want to join us for that ceremony. Also, small things are big things sometimes. We have had some outdoor lighting here at City Hall that hasn't worked in, I think, many years, and Baker Electric had a couple different investigative teams work on that and figure it out, and it's all working. So I just want to thank them and let you know about that. It's a small thing to notice, but I think you can tell it's made a big improvement to the safety and look of our downtown. And then I'll just share with you the downtown has a new logo, a new branding. So if you haven't seen that, maybe stop by Winston Brooks's office and have a look at the new logo. And then last, I'll just say we have been very busy, probably too many things, more than I can mention, but a lot of work with Tom Robinson and Winston Brooks on a variety of grants and business assistance, business expansion projects, improvements for downtown, our air park, our airport. So while this is typically a slower time, I think the agenda reflects it and our office reflects it. This has actually been, I think, the busiest time for us that we've had. So a lot of good things. Tonight, I do have a couple of presentations. I want to put them in front of the agenda items if you don't mind. And the first is we have the director of the Coffee County Emergency Management Agency with us, Alan Lindley. and he'll just give us an overview of the hazard mitigation plan and why you have a resolution tonight to adopt that.
Mr. Lenny, welcome.
Thank you. So the resolution, I think, was before you last meeting. I'm sorry I couldn't be here. We had a kind of a family emergency. So I kind of want to do an overview of the mitigation plan. The mitigation plan is written by us every 5 years. It has to be updated. Tullahoma has been a part of that mitigation plan since we started it. What the mitigation plan does is it allows for federal funding of mitigation projects ahead of a storm. So, give you a couple examples that I saw done in the past. If you've got areas that are flood prone, that may have houses and things like that in it, this mitigation plan will allow you to purchase those houses at a 75-25 split. The federal government paying 75%, the city would be responsible for the 25%. It will also allow you to put safe rooms in schools, retrofit schools for safe rooms, for tornadoes and things like that. Anything that you can think of mitigation-wise that will help the impact of a storm or a natural disaster, we can use mitigation funds for. The only thing that we have to do as a city and a county is to adopt the mitigation plan. It's already been approved by the state through our agency there, Tennessee Emergency Management Agency, and it's also been approved by the Federal Emergency Management Agency. We have to do those approvals prior to it coming back to the city and the county in order for us to approve it and adopt it as a plan. So is there any questions about the mitigation planning and how that works?
Mr. Barry?
Are there any actual costs to the city or anything?
There's no cost up front. So if you decide to work on a project, whatever that project is, then we submit that to the state, who would then send it up to the federal government. That project would be approved, and then the project would be completed. The federal government would be paying 75%. And depending on the time, and I say the time of year, but depending on if we have an active disaster or not in the state, a lot of times the state will pick up 12.5 of that 25%. So the city would only be out 12.5% at that point. And the good thing about that is all of that can be in-kind match. So work that we do towards that can be a match for that 12.5.
Is that what, when Nashville had that flooding and they bought several of those houses, is this the plan that they used? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
It's the same one, okay.
The federal funding, yes, ma'am.
Have we used it in recent years? Have we done anything in the past 5 or 10 years where we've utilized?
We haven't done any projects in the last, I've been the director of emergency management for 12 years now, and we haven't done any projects in either city or the county.
Okay.
Now, it's just been a dormant program. The money's been there. This is merely an update to the plan that we have to do every 5 years.
And I know hindsight's 2020. Would this have been? It has to be before the emergency. So
yes,
okay,
ma'am.
all right. So I was
Mitigation is
thinking about
prior
okay.
to, yes,
You
ma'am.
were thinking about the tornado.
I was. Yeah. So okay.
Does this cover things like active shooter situations, or is this natural disasters or emergency in general?
It mainly covers natural disasters. Active shooters is a different type thing. Now, if you do a safe room in a school or a safe room in a public building, that could be used for an active shooter because it's a secure location. So you get more for your money in that aspect.
One more. Was there any, as we do these, do we do any kind of community awareness trainings or asking the community, like, do you have flood insurance? Just kind of surveys. Do you got flood insurance? Are you living in the plains?
So what we had to do to get this approved by the state and the federal government, we had to have a county or a hearing, a public hearing, and announce that in the newspaper, so any of the public that wanted to come and submit any ideas. And we had a few, not many ideas. Most of the ideas we gained from the public works departments in each city and our county highway departments. A lot of it is road issues that we have that they're looking at. Raising roads, areas that are flooded or prone to flooding, we can go in with mitigation money. And projects that you may already be doing or may want to do, this funding would help offset the cost of that.
Good report. Thank you. So
I have one question, if I could. You mentioned this as it's related to natural disasters.
Yes, sir.
What about a situation where you've got to have trains that go through Tullahoma?
Yes, sir.
What if you have hazardous materials and an accident from a train derailment? Could we have a plan to cover a natural disaster like that?
Well, we actually do have a plan that covers that. It's called our Basic Emergency Operations Plan. It's a countywide plan that all of the first response agencies have looked at, have copies of, and it's basically a play-by-play manual of how we would handle some type of emergency. We're fortunate in this county, talking about hazardous materials. We've got about 20 hazardous materials technicians between Tullahoma and Manchester. The Department of Homeland Security and our Homeland Security funds have helped us buy lots of equipment and train lots of folks. As a matter of fact, there's several of the firefighters from Tullahoma in training today with me. They'll be with me for the next 2 weeks to be hazmat technicians. So,
well, you talked about creating plans ahead of time and having projects. Did these plans become inactive because you had them as a project?
No. The basic emergency plan that we have in place, it's updated every 5 years as well. The mitigation plan is totally separate from our operations plan. Both of them have to be updated every 5 years. They're not on the same cycle. Now, we look at our basic plan as far as our hazards and our vulnerabilities when we're doing the mitigation plan. So, for instance, our number one threat in this community is weather, without a doubt. We have several tornadoes. We've had a tornado in every month of the year in the past. So we look at those hazards and vulnerabilities for both plans. But the operations plan is what would we do in an emergency. The mitigation plan is what are we going to do prior to the emergency to keep that emergency from happening.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Lindley.
Thank you.
So in a few minutes, we have a resolution in support of this mitigation plan. Ms. Moody.
Okay. And then, as you know, we have been hard at work for actually a few years now on a new building for our police department. Tonight, I have with us, and I'll just name them now, but you don't have to get up just yet, Eric Burke with Savalis. He's our owner's representative on the project. And then Alan Hill with Upland Design. He's our project architect. And I will say as little or as much as you like as far as review on the project, but just to kind of bring you up to speed on what we're here to do tonight, I thought we would start by reviewing the process, the selection process that we used to identify a construction management firm. And that's why I've asked Eric to be here to kind of review that process. And then we'll take any questions from there. So tonight's action is really to award the bid to a construction management firm. And I think there's a little presentation needed with it because you're probably most familiar with a low bid type of request for proposal process, competitive process. And what we've done is we've put together a selection committee and looked for the best value. So we wanted to evaluate not only the price for construction, but also the qualifications of the firm and find the construction firm that was going to be the best fit for this project and give us the most value. So I will turn it over to Eric Burke and let him walk you through what we found in our selection process.
as Ms. Moody is passing us out, let me say thank you for allowing us to be a part of this project. And Alan is standing here next to me, and we have worked together on putting together these documents. Of course, he was the lead designer. He handled that portion of it. I was working on putting the process together by which we selected the CMs. What we did was a two-phased approach. We put out a request for qualifications to 26 firms. And in that process, we initiated it with a series of emails and follow-up phone calls. Of the 26 firms, we had 7 that accepted to be a part of this two-phase project. So when I say phases, the first phase was based on technical questions. The size of the firm, the financial strength, any kind of litigation sort of issues, the history of working on similar sort of projects. We wanted to get a feel for who their superintendent might be, who their project managers might be, the people who would be running and constructing the job. We did that as the design was being finalized, so that we didn't have to go through those series of questions once the final documents were prepared. Of that list, we had 7 responders, and we decided to not eliminate anyone from going into phase 2. The date that we took the responses for the RFQ for phase 1 is the date that the documents were finished. That started the phase 2 guaranteed maximum price process. As we were going through that, we did have one bidder back out. At the end of the day, on bid day, we had 5 firms that produced numbers for us. And of those 5 firms, 4 were very, very close, within about 2.8% on a $4+ million project. We decided to interview the 2 most responsive numbers based on the best value calculation. I can go into a lot of detail on the best value calculation, or I can go just based on the information you have in front of us. The results are in the document you're looking at. We did take a weighted score based on the decisions of the selection committee on what was most important. And in the course of that, we rated the firms based on that score, divided against the base price, and that gave us the best value calculation. The 2 firms that ended up being interviewed were American Constructors and Southland Constructors, both of the Nashville area. And during the course of the conversations we had with them here in town, it was pretty evident to us that the best choice was going to be American Constructors based on their superintendent. It's interesting when you go through all this, a lot of things percolate up as to what's valuable and what's maybe superfluous. And in this case, due to the size of the project, we felt that the superintendent choice was probably the most important, because he's going to be the one that's going to be here 100% of the time, as opposed to maybe a larger project where the project manager may be running the shop. In this case, the superintendent will. It was fairly unanimous on the selection committee that American had the best choice. We uncovered a minor situation on an interpretation of the site situation with unclassified soils. We got an interpretation from our soils and civil engineer, put that out to the 2 most responsive teams, American and Southland, and had them give us a best and final offer, a BAFO. At the end, when we calculated the numbers, they're within $4,000 of each other. So pretty tight numbers. So realize we are over budget, but I would like to recognize that this building at 10,000 feet, we have already made a 40% cut on the size of the building. It was originally designed at 14,000 feet. So the committee feels, the selection committee feels like this choice, based on the fact that American Constructors had the best technical score, they had the best price at the end of the best value design, and when you look at the best value calculation, they came out the winner. Any questions based on that bit of information? I know I've hit you with a lot of information that's in front of you, but I realize that questions can come up.
Before you go into questions, I want to just commend both of our professionals here in the quality of the competition that you created. I do think sometimes it's there's some intangible and hard to measure benefits to having an owner's representative on a construction project. And this is one where I think it's very tangible. I can see it in the fact that we had such a high number of people interested in bidding and very responsive. And then when you look at the numbers and just as you said, how close the bids came in to each other, I think the numbers are very competitive. Also, prior to putting this out to bid, I know that both Eric and Alan spent time talking with contractors, and I know, Eric, you spent some time with one construction firm specifically that was not intending to bid on the project, so there wasn't a conflict, but we thought that we had a pretty good handle on what the bids would come in at. Obviously, we were surprised at the high number, but it was hard to argue when you see how close they are. So the market's telling us this is what it costs to build the project. But I just wanted to share that with you. I think they really did their due diligence and worked hard to bring us a competitive process and do a very thorough job of helping us vet all of these firms.
So I know, Mr. Norris, we asked you to participate in this as well. Do you have any comments at this point?
Yes, I do. Actually, I want to talk about why the numbers came in so close together. The RFP that went out was very well defined. Therefore, there was not a lot of ambiguity in what the proposers were bidding on. So that's commendable to put that spec out such that you get bids that close. The other thing I would like perhaps for Ms. Burke to comment on was, I know that you did some interviews with customers of American Constructors and for Southland. Tell us about the responses you got from the people that they had done work for.
Yes, both firms had very interesting comments about American Constructors. I'll speak to them first. They are our choice. They had built two very similar, at least to each other, buildings for the city of Nashville, and they've gone through a best value determination process. And the projects were built simultaneously, and I talked to both the architect of that building and the city's administrator who was overseeing that project work. And both of them just spoke at length as to the quality of the people inside of American, the clarity of their communication, their openness. They never felt like that they were being overcharged for any kind of change orders. That's always an opportunity for contractors to play some games. They never felt anything other than they absolutely had the right team, and it was built on time and on budget, and they were actually friends at the end of the job, which is what we all hope for. But sometimes it's not possible. So yeah, American had a very strong reputation, and you look at some of their projects that they've done around the area. And so did Southland. Southland carries a very strong team of people. They're a bit larger firm on a national scale, but they do have a local presence. And in the end, you can see the numbers were within $4,000 of each other. But it was the superintendent of American that we felt like was the best fit for the city.
One other comment, they have done some work locally in Coffee County. They actually built the Coffee County Middle School on Woodbury Highway here in town. So that's an example locally of what they've done before. But I think the end of the day, the numbers came in over budget, yes, but they were all consistent. So we know what this building is going to cost, and I think this team has done a great job in keeping the competition keen, selecting to two bidders, and I think we've gotten the best value that we could possibly get.
Thank you. Any other comments at this point?
I have some, but I don't know if it's now or once will our motion be to accept the bid as well as modify the budget and pull funds. So it's not just accepting this bid, right?
Yes.
It'll be changing the budget and pulling funds from two different capital projects and moving from the,
Yes, I'm asking you to approve the agreement, the project budget, amending it to allocate funds out of other capital projects into this project, and authorize us to move forward with American Constructors to negotiate an agreement.
I have questions, but they may not be.
No, go ahead.
Until.
Yeah, I would hope that we would have the discussion now, and then when we get to, I mean, it doesn't stop you from having more questions when we get to the item, but.
Well, I guess I wasn't here, but before my time, we had a police department project come before the board, correct? Or no, or it was over budget at that time as well, and we kicked the process back.
Right.
And so we raised the budget in February to $4.2 million. When we went through the engineering process and drew it out and said, well, this is what we want, did we take that budget into consideration? I'm very pro new police department, but I'm also concerned that we're $1 million, 1.1 million, 1.3 million over budget after being over budget the last time. And so it just, things never go to budget, even if we pull contingencies. And then I think the second part of that is where those funds, extra funds, are coming from. I see $409,000 from sidewalks and miscellaneous. Should we be pulling money from $400,000 from sidewalks?
Well, so, okay, I was prepared for this question, so I brought a timeline, if you'll pass that around.
So the 4.2 million was the original estimate.
Yeah.
And when the bids initially went out, they were much higher than that. The difference now is, I think, we've got a team of people looking at this to make sure that the quotes are correct. I think that somebody used the phrase that what the market is.
Yeah, so knowing that we have two new aldermen who were not here from the very beginning of the project, I did put together a timeline of just some major elements of the project timeline. And I think the first thing that stood out to me, especially looking retrospectively, is that it was in 2017 that this project was first an idea. Hey, we're going to build a new police department. 2017. So a lot has changed in the construction market, inflation, various factors. But the very initial budget that was set was $3,250,000. That was before a design professional was brought on board.
That was just
an idea and a guess.
That was an idea. That's not, I mean, when we came up with the $7 million bond issue, some of you remember that, that was just a number that we thought might work.
Oh, so it wasn't like a research number.
No, that was, I took $7 million and started allocating monies, and that's what that was. So that was not a good
And
number.
especially in capital projects, that is what a capital budget is for the most part. It's your best guess. You haven't brought in engineers, you haven't brought in architects yet. You're really just doing your best guess of what it might cost, and that's what that number represented. I can definitely say that time, so just simply looking at the time, if nothing else had changed, that number would have been wrong, because we're now 2 years past when we set that budget. The next thing that occurred is you got a new city administrator late 2018, and I started looking at the project. Eric tells me this is unusual, but this is actually the third police department new construction project that I've been a part of, so I know some things to look for. I, maybe have a few bruises from that. But one of the things I saw right away is we didn't have a total project budget. We had budgeted $3.2 million, but we had left out any funding for what we call owner's costs. So we're responsible for providing all of the technology that's in the building, pulling those wires, providing the security system for the building, the door entry, all of that has to be provided by the owner. The furnishings and some equipment has to be provided by the owner. We had no budget established for that.
And the designer's fees.
Yes, and then we had no budget for an owner's representative, which, again, speaking to the bruises of past projects, I knew that a project this size could not be managed by either a police chief or a city administrator without construction knowledge and experience. You've got to have a qualified professional to work alongside the city so that our interests are represented. Nothing against architects, but they tend to be very protective of their design, and they're agents of their own interests. Nothing against contractors. We need them to build projects, but they're agents of their own interests. We needed somebody looking out for the city, and that's the value that we get in having an owner's representative. But we needed to increase the budget to pay one. And then the other thing is we didn't have any contingency, and there's not any project, especially of this size, a $4 million, $5 million project, that there are going to be things that come up that maybe we haven't thought of yet, or something that we want to add later on to the project. So I think it's best to have a healthy contingency. So we did that when we increased the budget in February of 2019 and recognized that, and this was, I believe, at Mayor Curley's direction from this board, saying, we do not want you to increase the construction budget. You need to hold to $3.2 million for construction, but you did grant increasing the project budget to $4.2 million to incorporate all of those other expenses that we may have. So again, that was a budget, and I feel like we did all of the due diligence that we could do and that the professionals could do, reaching out to their contacts, and tried to estimate what this project would cost short of actually bidding it. And I think we were so sure that we were close that we even, right before it went to bid, we took anything that could slightly be considered a nice to have, and we removed it from the base bid and put it in as an ad alternate, that we thought we'll be sure to hit the budget number if we do these things. And then, like I said, we put it out to bid and the market said, no, you're wrong. So literally, looking back, I think Alan could probably speak to it better, but back in 2017, when this was just an idea and we first brought him on, we were looking at maybe $250 a square foot for a police building. Looking at other people that were building police departments, that's what they were getting. In early 2019, when we looked again, it was already going for over $320 a square foot, some of the newer projects that we were seeing. And now you have our project, which is closer to $400 a square foot. So this rapid increase in construction costs is, I would say, unprecedented. This may be possibly the worst time to build a police building, but the reason I continue to move forward and recommend it is we've spent quite a bit of public money designing this project, spent quite a bit of money to get to this point. The need for the building has not gone away. It actually continues to grow, and we can't promise you that if you wait to build it, it would be anything but more expensive. So unfortunately, you know, I can tell you how we got here. I thought that we really have done everything we could do to try to bring the project in on budget, and we even, in this best value or best and final offer decision, we asked the top two firms to sort of compete against each other and bring us your best value ideas to the table. And they brought different ideas and things that we could kick around, but I would say they weren't feasible ideas. Without, perhaps, I'd say the most feasible idea would be going back and almost redesigning the project again. So we've done the best that we can, really, to maximize the site that we're given. So I think that's an upside, that we were donated land for this project. That's an expense that the city doesn't have to bear.
Was there any expense making that land work for our needs, any additional that we wouldn't have had? Like, the land didn't cost us anything, but the cost of us, I don't know how much. I know there's a pretty decent, there's a hill there. the cost of moving that land, does that offset the cost of that being donated to us?
We have not compared the value of the land to the development cost. You know, there's no such thing as a perfect piece of property. Everywhere we build, there's going to be something. So we've not looked at that. I don't know what the value of the land would be, but my guess is it's no more complicated than any other site that we would be given to work with.
I think this piece of property has an interesting history. I just recently learned that it was the site of the USO building during the Camp Forest days. And so that's pretty interesting to be building a new public facility on that same property. And then the site, I think, lends itself to some positive improvements in terms of what we can do with drainage. And we're going to be building sidewalk along the street edge to further that connection. To me, I think after the police project, we have a project on the books. It doesn't have a timeline associated with it yet, but there is a TDOT project to replace the bridge on West Grundy Street. And I think when we get that project done, we'll incorporate a pedestrian safe crossing at that bridge, and we'll have a complete connection from our greenway into the downtown along West Grundy Street. So I would say there probably could be some expense to this site, maybe because we're building into the side of the hill, I don't know. But I think the positives of the site probably outweigh it. And the ability for us to share parking with City Hall is a good plus.
I would agree with you on that, Jen. That location is key and is worth any additional development cost that we have.
I mean, you want a central location. You want your police officers to be able to central. Yeah, where they need to be, and I can't even think of a place that's available. Really.
One of the things that might help with your thoughts about, okay, what's it finally going to cost?
Right, I just want to make sure we're not coming back. This is
that's
the
what I
last
address
time.
that. And one of the key points that this contractor, this construction company, had in their proposal was a term GMP, guaranteed maximum price. And for every subcontractor that they bring in, they incorporated GMP, guaranteed maximum price, in that contract, which we become the beneficiary of. You might want to address that further.
There's a couple of aspects of the best value design that allows us to make review much easier post-bid. On a typical hard bid, you don't necessarily know the breakdown, and you don't necessarily get a view of the breakdown. You get a schedule of values, but you don't necessarily know how they've broken it up and how they're actually getting their quotes as to what's being posted. We have complete open book possibility. We see every contractor going to see, every contractor going to write, and we can hold them accountable. The GMP on this also includes, if you talk about risk to the site, because I see that probably being our biggest concern, is there some soils that have to be dealt with. And during the best value, or the BAFO, the best and final offer process, we asked and forced the two final CMs to address it. So in other words, the only things that can change at GMP is owner-directed scope change. We want to add a floor. That's not anything the contractor would have anticipated. Or unforeseen conditions. So by clarifying the interpretation of where we are on the site, they are buying the site as is. So they cannot come back to us and say, we found a bunch of spongy soils that we're going to have to dig 50 feet down to guarantee a foundation that will support this building. If that were the case, I don't think it will be the case, and they don't think it will be the case, but if that were the case, they've had the soils report to review with the bore logs and everything else. They have bought the site as is, and they've addressed the few spongy soil spots that have to be addressed, so that when they get down to subgrade, there's not going to be any requests from them coming back to the city as to, we found an issue, and here's a change order request.
South Middle School that construction project they found themselves.
That's exactly the point we're trying to avoid.
Yeah, so what that's avoided, we're good there.
We're done.
So
They've
what
bought
I'm
the
hearing
site.
is we're not gonna come back, I'm not gonna have to go back to our taxpayers and say, we're raising the budget again. This is it. This is all the.
Not
Correct.
unless we, the city, make some kind of change,
Change.
yeah, to the building or decide we want to change.
The other question on that is the $409,000 for the sidewalks.
Yeah, so you were asking about the budget and where the funding could come from. And what I saw was that within our capital projects fund, we have a small amount, $176,190 in what we call a contingency. And that's just where many of those projects are like budgeted amounts. Until we go to bid, until we finish the project, we're just allocating enough funds for what we think it will cost. So we keep a very small contingency in case a project goes over what we thought it would cost. And sometimes we have projects that come in under, we roll that out of that project into contingency. So it fluctuates over time. But right now, that's what we have available to move out of contingency towards this project. And then in the sidewalks, we had actually over $500,000 that when the board issued bonds in 2017, they said, we want to fund sidewalks generally. So that's why it says sidewalks miscellaneous, because there were not specific segments of sidewalks identified or specific projects, but we knew that we wanted to generally allocate that much money to sidewalks. Tonight on your agenda, you have a sidewalk project for Avoca Road and Kings Lane. I'm recommending that we keep enough money to do that project and move it forward, but that you take the remainder of that sidewalk money and move it to the police project. And then the other, that makes up for about half of what we need, and then the other half we would take out of general fund reserves, but only if we need it, because like I told you, I've got room in the budget for owners' items and for contingency, and so only if I use all of those funds would then I go have Sue move anything from reserves.
Well, I guess my question would be, if we walk around town and we talk to people, and we all know we need a police department. We all know that. Citizens know that as well. But if we go around and we talk to people and say, what are your top 3 things? Sidewalks is going to be 1 or 2. And so if we have $409,000 in there, I guess the question would be, why haven't we used it yet to repair? This one over there in the Bel Air area, that cross guard over there called me because he's seen kids bust their head twice, like in the past month and a half. So why aren't we using those funds? And if we have it, you know, I know that we're doing that one project, but that's just one project in one area of town. But if we ask, sidewalks are a top 3 priority for the citizens in this community.
Well, also,
Police
we
department's
have more
ours.
than just one sidewalk project going on. The issue is we have different sources of money for it. So you're just seeing in this budget the money from the bond, from one bond issuance going into sidewalks. But we have other sources of funding and projects in various stages. So you won't really see the work if it's in the design phase or the right-of-way acquisition phase. But we have other sidewalk projects in the works.
So this won't affect funding sidewalks in any shape or form. We have enough money to repair and replace the sidewalks that we need.
Well, I can't say that. It's a change. So you had, in a budget, you had over $500,000 allocated to sidewalks. And I am asking you to pull a significant amount of that to put it towards the police building. But it's what we do every day. We're juggling priorities. There are a lot of things when we borrowed that money that we wanted to do with it. Mayor Curley can attest, I think he has a long list of projects that ended up not being funded because we've run out. We didn't anticipate this police building to cost this much.
Right. And I understand, and I get that, and I think what you guys here have done is absolutely amazing. And the work that you put in, it's just really tough for me we have our priorities and things that we want to do, but the residents' priorities are sidewalks and roads. And so it's difficult for me to go back and say, hey,
and you have
we're
been in
gonna
our
pull-
police facility. And you
Which
can
we know
attest
that we
to
do.
that it's
Oh,
not a modern
absolutely.
policing
I sat
facility
there in
by
the
any standard.
Summer when it was 92 degrees in there.
And it costs our citizens every time we have turnover in that department. And I can't think of a better recruitment tool than to tell them that we're going to provide you a modern facility and a place to train. Right now, they have to do all their training, roll call, meals, everything in one room. It's so inadequate. And so I would just say to our residents, I think public safety is our number one service that we provide as a city. When you look at what is core, sidewalks, while they are nice to have and connectivity is so important, public safety is our number one mission.
Well, they would argue public safety, especially with the incidents we've had over at Boca. The kids over here who've had to go to the hospital. I mean, so they would argue public safety in those that they're using every day. It's just a tough, and Chief, I'm not diminishing. I absolutely know the need for the police department. Is there just nowhere else we can get those funds from?
There is not. So
They
our
can be
sources.
taken out of reserves, but the problem is there's already money coming out of reserves, and the state required, I don't know if they require $5 million.
They encourage.
But they encourage a base of $5 million. Daniel, Mr. Berry, I honestly think that within the year, there'll be money, big money allocated just for sidewalks. There's still bonding capacity left, and you know, there were so many projects that got left out of that $7.2 million bond this year. So many projects. They're good projects. But other projects took their place. So I anticipate that there will be another bond issue at some point, with emphasis on sidewalks, to be honest with you. Anybody else? Anything else? Any other discussion? I'm not going to cut anybody off. This is a big deal. But it comes up on the agenda very shortly. Ms. Moody, anything else?
I don't have anything else.
No. Mr. Hill, anything? Mr. Burke, anything else? You good?
Thanks for coming.
Yep. Thank you. Okay. Let's see, Ms. Moody, anything else from the city administrator report? Are you good?
No.
No? Okay. So we have several consent agenda items, 19-156 minutes of the November 11th, 2019 regular meeting, 19-157 October financial report, 19-158 approve a request for surplus city right-of-way at 114 South Maple Street. We earlier had a public hearing on that. 19-159 approve an agreement with Business Information Systems Corporation for credit card services to support online payment of city property taxes. And that's all the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Move to approve.
Second.
Proper motion by Dr. Blank, second by Mr. Novis. All those in favor of the consent agenda as presented, vote aye. Opposed, vote red. Motion passes 6-0. Old business, ordinance number 1530, an ordinance to amend Title 16, Streets and Sidewalks, etc., by amending Chapter 5, Street, Curbs, and Sidewalk Design Standards and Specifications of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Tullahoma, Tennessee, to adopt on the second and final two readings. We earlier had a discussion on that, and Ms. Moody explained the three parts of this ordinance. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
A motion by Ms. Blackwell, seconded by Ms. Dunn, Mr. Mills. Okay. Any discussion? Ready to vote? All those wishing to vote for ordinance 1530 on final reading, vote green. Opposed, vote red. Motion passes 6-0. Ms. Moody, any other old business?
No.
No. We have several items of new business. Resolution number 1818 to adopt the Coffee County Hazard Mitigation Plan. Earlier heard a discussion about Mr. Lindley. Is there a motion to adopt?
Move to adopt.
Second.
Proper motion by Mr. Noah, second by Dr. Blanks. Any discussion?
I just want to say thank you for explaining all that. That really clarified.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Berry, for suggesting that he come. Good. I learned as well. So we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor vote green. Opposed, vote red. Motion passes 6-0. Resolution number 1819, adopt the Tullahoma Americans with Disabilities ADA Transition Plan. We need a motion and a second. I'll defer to Ms. Moody if there's any question.
Move to adopt.
A motion by Mr. Novis. We had a chorus of seconds. Who seconded? Ms. Blackwell. Second. Any discussion?
One question, this is an easy one. This is a living document, right? So we can update and change as we need to.
It is.
Other discussion? Ready to vote? All those in favor of Resolution 1819, vote green. Opposed, vote red. Motion passes 6-0. Ordinance number 1531, an ordinance to amend the zoning map of the City of Telluride, Tennessee, as set forth in the Telluride Municipal Code, which is ordinance number 1392, to rezone two parcels addressed as 412 North Jackson Street and 107 West Hogan Street from C1 Central Commercial District to C2 General Commercial District, and set a public hearing for Monday, January 13th, 2020 at 5:30 p.m. This is the first reading.
This is the first reading.
Yeah, this is first reading and setting a public hearing.
Yes, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because I would like to point out, as often as possible, we're going to try to follow this new format and streamline. What we were doing previously was you were setting a public hearing under consent, and then the next meeting approving at first reading, and the next reading or approving it on second reading. This will speed up approvals by at least 2 weeks, sometimes more.
Do we have a motion in the second?
Move to approve the motion.
Second.
Motion, Mr. Noah, second, Ms. Blackwell. Any discussion?
I think it's exciting to see a business wanting to expand, and I think this is cool. So,
Yeah. All those in favor of ordinance number 1531, vote green. Opposed, vote red. Motion passes 6-0. Agenda item number 19160, approve an agreement with American Constructors for construction of the New Telluride Police Department with a guaranteed maximum price of $4,352,685, and authorize the amendment of the project budget to a new total amount of $5,317,685, with $532,395 in funding to be allocated from general fund unassigned reserves.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Blanks, second by Mr. Lewis. Any discussion?
Real quick question. Sorry. If we don't, so that's if we need those funds, if we don't use those funds, can we guarantee they go back to the same spots, or those just go back into a general?
The reserves, I assume, is what you're asking about, or
Yeah.
any of the capital funds. Anything that's allocated in the capital projects fund will stay in there. But in order to use the general fund reserves, we have to actually do a transfer.
Okay.
So if we don't transfer the funds in, they'd remain in our reserve account. But all of the other funding stays within capital project fund.
I'm still personally a little uneasy, but if we as a board can commit to making that a big priority. And I know that we have, and we shift things around all the time. And we're doing things for safety that I know the residents don't always realize, and it's difficult. And the stuff with, you do have to guesstimate sometimes on what the budget is, and then budget again, but they don't always see that. What people see is, we said it's going to be this, and then we come back and say it's going to be this, and then we come back and say it's going to be this, and that makes it a tough situation. And so as long as we can make it a commitment to ourselves and to you to make sidewalks in those areas, and when I get calls from crossing guards and teachers,
Listen,
it breaks my heart.
Two things. I should not have made up the number of 3.25 million 2 years ago, which I did. Shouldn't have done that. Learned a lesson. And number two, I can't speak for anybody else, but I want sidewalks as bad as you do, and perhaps anybody else. So I'm going to work hard to take that to the next step. I'll give you my assurance anyway.
And I personally think that the next agenda item, having that on there, gives us talking points as to how we are prioritizing it. And to your point, I think if you talk to them about what it is and sit down and explain the funding, usually people...
Well, I have some of the background information now on where those numbers and why the numbers changed, and that was the reason I asked them the questions, is why these numbers changed, because I didn't know. And so now, that makes it a little bit easier to talk about. That's all.
Mr. Rivers, thank you for your help. in guiding this project as well. Ms. Moody has done an excellent job, and I appreciate your help.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion and a second?
We did.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? Everybody clear? All those in favor of the motion as presented, vote green. Opposed, vote red. Motion passes 6-0. Thanks for being here tonight. Ms. Moody, thank you as well.
Thank you.
Okay, agenda item 19-161, approve a project budget for phase 1 of the Kings Lane Avoca Road Sidewalk Project, amount of $112,500 from the Capital Projects Fund. Let me get a motion in a second.
Motion.
Motion by Ms. Blackwell. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Dunn. Any discussion?
And this is just for phase 1, correct? Purchasing right-of-ways and things like that?
Yes, if I can, I want to bring your attention, I passed out tonight, you should have a copy of this map somewhere at your seat. This is our master sidewalk plan. And these are all of these projects are ones that we're, for the most part, actively pursuing. And I wanted you to have kind of an overview of what that looks like. I agree with all of you that while you might disagree on other things, sidewalks is the one thing that I consistently hear from all of you and you all agree on as a top priority. I would say, just like you mentioned, in this past year, we've had 2 significant pedestrian accidents along Avoca Road, and I know that this particular segment is very important to you. So what we've done is we're recommending that we move forward with funding of this, but to do it in a way, this is how we've done it other cities that I'm in, break it into 2 phases. And there's logic in both ways. There's logic in funding a project in its entirety at the front. There's also logic specifically when you know there's going to be a significant amount of time that passes between the design and the right-of-way acquisition before the project is bid. There's some wisdom in waiting. And so what I'm presenting tonight is that you approve phase 1, which is that we move forward with design of this route as proposed, and we go ahead and start to acquire the easements necessary. And once we, if we find that, just as an example, if we find that it's easier for some reason to get the easements along Kings Lane than it is to get the ones we need along Avoca Road, then we could look at bidding out the Kings Lane segment as its own project, finish up getting our easements acquired, and then bid out Avoca Road as a second phase. So we want to leave all those options on the table. Also, wait until closer to when we go to bid to ask you to budget the funds for construction. So tonight, you're just approving phase 1, design and easement acquisition at a smaller amount than the total project cost.
Can I ask one question?
Mm-hmm.
It's mildly tangential. I'm excited that we're doing this, but the other question is there anything we can do in the meantime to mitigate? I know thankfully it's getting colder, so hopefully fewer kids will be walking that way. But is there anything we can do in the meantime to mitigate any accidents that could possibly happen?
That is a very tall order. What we've been doing in the meantime, and we also do have Scott St. John, our city engineer, in the audience to speak to this item if you have a specific engineering question. But what I know I'm doing with Chief Williams right now is evaluating the school zone.
Great.
And seeing if because I know immediately there was a lot of questions asked about, couldn't we just put a crossing guard out on Avoca Road? The truth is, it's not safe for pedestrians to cross right now. You know the intersection at Kings Lane and Avoca Road. It's not signalized. There's no crosswalk there. It's really not a safe place to cross. We don't want to promote crossings there. Okay. And then even the thought of putting a crossing guard there when vehicles aren't being asked to slow down because it's before you even get to the school zone. So I couldn't be responsible or take that liability on the city to do that. But I think we can look at what would be necessary to expand the school zone to include that portion of the intersection and Avoca Road. And what could we do to make it a little bit safer.
And I asked that question solely so that people on TV
Okay.
can hear of this, because I know that, you know, I feel like they should know that this is actually being talked about and discussed, so that they know that, you know, we're working on things. So, thank you.
So let's put a timeline to that.
To the school zone or to the sidewalk project?
School zone.
Okay.
Looking at crosswalks, looking at expanding the school zone, is that a month from now, 2 months from now, 3 months
Well,
from now?
crosswalks and the intersection improvements are a component of this sidewalk project. So that has about just purely the construction of the improvements. It has a 9-month timeline. It'll really be dependent on this first phase. How long does design and easement acquisition take? And what I'm hoping to do to speed that up is to have a neighborhood meeting and be prepared with the documents that we need to get easements signed right there at the meeting. And I think the citizens in that area are very aware of these accidents and how great the need is. So if they can help us obtain the easements as quickly as possible, we can move that 9-month timeline up and get the project constructed. So I think the intersection improvements are really needed. You know.
Is there anything we can do to help you with the easement acquisition?
I definitely think so. We could prepare, maybe show you, well, you can probably tell from the route which properties we're looking at and where we need to acquire the easements. But it's mainly just a matter of contacting those homeowners and having them voluntarily consent to allow us to build it.
Does Mr. Taylor do that now?
He does.
That's a big job, in
It
addition
is.
to his other.
And that's why when Mr. Taylor and Mr. St. John and I met about it, we talked about doing the neighborhood meeting style format. Instead of just sending letters and hoping to get a response, or sending Public Works out to knock on doors, we thought, let's just invite them to a meeting, give them an overview of the project and why it's needed, and really try to get as many at one time as we can.
Sell it, that'd be better.
Well, that's, yeah.
I think your idea of having it at the fire department is an excellent idea.
Yes.
That will draw some people that might not otherwise come.
And that's one benefit of this route, is we do own one piece. We have a Fire Hall 2 is along this route.
And I would like to think Grace Baptist Church is probably the longest stretch there. I would think that they would be receptive to that, but I don't know. And the parking lot is a big part of that anyway.
Yes, and I did talk today to Jason Ray with the school, Tullahoma City Schools, and he is going to try to see what data they have and what they can provide. They do collect information about who walks to school, so if that's reported accurately, then that'll give us a picture. Maybe we can make a heat map or something and show how
You have
many.
to sign a permission form and say where they're walking to, so they know exactly which homes each
Yes.
is walking to.
So anecdotally, anyway, we believe that a lot of walkers are coming from that west side of Avoca Road. And that's why both of these accidents happened very close to that Avoca Road and Redwood intersection.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think what they're doing, they're trying to cross the road there because they know there's too many turning movements and they can't get across at the intersection.
And
so they're crossing at Redwood and trying to cut through that neighborhood to get to either Max Lane and Robert E. Lee or the middle school.
If you notice, the map does show the sidewalk extending now all the way back to Hillwood, which is that subdivision she's talking about that a lot of the children probably come from. So I appreciate Ms. Moody moving it back up to Hillwood instead of short of that. I was just looking, I was going to be happy with Nobblet Lane, but now we're back to Hillwood, which I think is a good idea.
Yeah.
Can you send this digitally? So I can put a little bigger one I can read.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
I know a guy.
You're not that old yet.
Oh, I do need to get that down too.
Did we vote on that?
We did not vote, but we
Okay.
do have a motion
Motion
and a
and a
second.
As you notice, I'm barely at 90% tonight, so
You're doing fine.
thank you. All those in favor of the motion, please vote green.
90%.
Those that red, I'll tell Evelyn.
90% is pretty
encourage
good.
it.
I'm at 3 hours of sleep every
Motion.
night, so.
Motion passes 6-0. Agenda item 19-162, approve a bid award and agreement with Centurion Industries in the amount of $155,060 for the city stamps roof replacement project.
Motion approved.
Second.
Motion by Dr. Blank, seconded by somebody over here. Mr. Berry. This is one of those items that the money is, as I recall, is coming out of the $7.2 million budget. One of those, it just got, that money just got taken away. Any discussion? Ready to vote? All those in favor of the motion, vote green, opposed, vote red. Motion passes 6-0. Ms. Moody, any other new business?
No other new business.
All right, we'll adjourn and go into the beer board portion of the agenda. We have one item, 19 BB42 minutes of November 11th, 2019 beer board meeting. So a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Call for motion by Dr. Mr. Norris, seconded by Mr. Berry. All those in favor of the consent agenda is presented, vote green, opposed, vote red. Motion passes 6-0. No other business, we are adjourned. Good meeting, thank you.